Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Big Ten Quick Talk Podcast. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, and in today's video, I will be giving you guys my 12-team playoff predictions, the post-spring, early summer edition. I'll be doing one more of these toward the start of the season, and this differs from my previous one that I did right after the season ended. So let's get right into it. So let's go ahead and look at the top four seeds that I have here. Number one, Georgia, top seed, best head coach in the game, one of the best quarterbacks in the game in Carson Beck. Carson Beck, he was one of the better ones last year, and he's going to take another step forward this year. So I think that he'll definitely be a day one draft pick in my opinion if he keeps the trajectory that he is on. And you might not know too much about this Georgia team. I don't know as much as I really should, but Coach Smart gets the benefit of the doubt. He's won the national championship the last 2 out of 3 years. Honestly, should have been in the college football playoff last year, and who knows? They maybe would have won last year. I don't know. Them versus Michigan would have been a heck of a game. Florida State, my number 4 seed. Great portal class, got talent from all over the country, especially out of Bama and Georgia as well. So I think that when you get players from the top universities, that bodes well, even if they're not as star-studded as they could be. I think Mike Norvell is the top coach in the ACC, and the schedule is really easy. They'll be able to win 9 games, go 9-3, 10-2, and be able to win the ACC most likely. I do see the argument for Miami. I just think Florida State's more proven here. The number 2 seed, Ohio State, best roster in the game, better roster than Georgia, most balanced roster in the game. They have insane quarterback rooms, wide receiver rooms. The running back room is insane. The defensive line is star-studded everywhere, and the safety room is also elite. Ryan Day, yes, there's arguments for and against him, but he can't lose with this roster. It's impossible. Will be. And my number 3 seed, Utah. Best roster in the Big 12. Top coach in the Big 12 and Kyle Whittingham. One of the best coaches in the league, in my opinion. Great identity. They run the football. They play good defense. And they have athletes on their team. And they have one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 in Cam Rising coming back and fully healthy. And now we have the 12-seeded Boise State Broncos playing the 5-seeded Oregon Ducks. Winner plays Florida State. Boise State, they were the Mountain West champion last year, and the former number 1 overall quarterback in the 2023 recruiting cycle was quarterback Malachi Nelson. He transfers in from USC, and star running back Ashton Gianti returns for Boise State. Not many of you will know that name because not many of you pay close attention to Boise State. I'm not going to pretend like I paid too close of attention, but Gianti had 1,347 yards last year, averaged 6.1 a carry and 14 touchdowns, went off in the Mountain West Championship game for 153 yards to beat UNLV, to rout UNLV, and I think that they will be the best group of 5 team playing the best team to not win a conference, Oregon. Oregon had a phenomenal portal class. I cannot tell you how many players they got because they got so many. I think they got near 7 or 8 blue chip prospects alone. Production will be through the roof with this team. The way their offense is run, the way their defense is run, the production numbers will be through the roof. I think that they will be second only to Ohio State in the Big Ten. I think, yes, this is getting a little bit too in-depth here, but I think Oregon will beat Ohio State in the regular season and lose them in the Big Ten championship game. So I think they end up with this number 5 seed here. And the winner of this game, really no contest, will be Oregon. If you remember if you remember back to last season when they played, I think Toledo, the best group of 5 team in that New Year's Six Bowl, they routed them. Bo Nix only played like a quarter and a half, and that was done. And next up, we have the 11th seeded Kansas Jayhawks playing the 6th seeded Ole Miss Rebels. Now, Kansas, I know y'all be laughing at me for this one, but y'all don't have any substance behind it. Quarterback Jalen Daniels is must-see TV when he is healthy. I cannot stress enough, when he is healthy, Kansas is a top 15 team. He is. And we would have been including him in Heisman conversations last year if not for injuries. He got off to a tremendous start. And even after he was injured, Kansas played pretty well last year. Players like senior running back Devin Neal and corner Kobe Bryant round out the running back and cornerback rooms. And if you look at the schedule, they will probably be ranked within the 20 to 25 range to start the year, and they could easily crack the top 15 with ease halfway through the season. And if they finish the season on a high note, I think they'll make it to the Big 12 championship game with Utah. I think Utah will beat them. Kansas will have 2 losses and just barely make the college football playoff based off of that. Now to Ole Miss, the 6th-seeded Ole Miss Rebels. The Ole Miss Rebels were the transfer portal kings. Here's what they got. Most notable names: 5-star defensive lineman Walter Nolan, the best defensive lineman in this portal class and one of the best overall in the country. He is a stud. And 4-star edge Princely Umumyelen. He is a stud, was a stud at Florida, transferred over to Ole Miss. Ole Miss has a ton of stacked. I mean, if I read to you every single player that they got, high profile player that they got, it would take all day. I mean, 4-star corner from Houston, all these different players transferring in to an already good team. And this offense, especially with that wide receiver room, with their quarterback Jackson Dart taking another leap, presumably. And they have a workable / easier schedule for the SEC. They only have a couple games that is really like 1 or 2 games that are going to be real trouble for them. But then past that, I think they go 11-1, possibly making the SEC championship game. I have to check on my seedings for that and my intel. But winning this game between Kansas and Ole Miss, this would be a shootout. This would be a great game to watch. But I think Ole Miss's defense is a little bit better than Kansas's defense, and Ole Miss did play in the SEC and faced some marquee teams. I think they played Georgia, for instance. So I think Ole Miss wins this to go on to play Utah. And now we have the 10-seeded Texas Longhorns taking on the 7th-seeded Alabama Crimson Tide. This is becoming a bit of a rivalry now if this game were to happen. And Texas, Quinn Ewers returns. Now, I have doubts about his play. I don't think he's as hyped, should be as hyped up as he is with the national media. He's very inconsistent with his play. And plus, Steve Sarkisian, one of the better head coaches in the league, ultra aggressive, wins his team a lot of games that way. Timely portal additions, such as wide receiver Isaiah Bond. Texas needed to get someone like Isaiah Bond after losing players like Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. And they got a player along in that caliber in Isaiah Bond. They have a workable schedule as long as they get through Michigan early, and I have doubts that that will happen, as we'll see when we talk about Michigan. Oops, word got out there. Alabama, they'll take a step back, but not a big one, though. I mean, a step back for Alabama is getting the 7th seed in the college football playoff. They should be up in those top 4 seeds, but this is a step back, air quotes, step back. Milroe, he's going to be a Heisman quarterback. I think he's going to win the Heisman. I think he's the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. And the offensive line should be really, really good. As they got Caden Proctor back from Iowa, that was a whole big ordeal. And yes, they did lose players like Seth McLaughlin, but I think that they recruit well enough so that they have players just like those players that left. The defense, they lost a ton, but I think they will play well enough for the offense to carry. I don't think the defense is going to be elite, but I think the defense is going to hold teams to between 20 and 25 points while the offense goes out and scores 30. I think that's going to be the game plan for Bama throughout the season. Now, winning this game, Quinn Ewers was terrible last year in his first postseason game, really meaningful postseason game, and he was terribly inconsistent in that game, and I think that may end up happening again. Plus, Kalen DeBoer and Kalen DeBoer's staff, they did face this Texas team, so they know how to play this Texas team. And Bama, they're going to be much more disciplined on offense. They're going to be way more methodical. They're going to control the clock. I think that Alabama wins this game by 2 scores. Now I have the 8-seeded Notre Dame Fighting Irish playing the 9-seeded Michigan Wolverines. Michigan, the Harbaugh plan is still there. The Harbaugh mark is still there with Michigan. That's not going to go away. The toughness, the physicality, how they hit, how they block, knowing the game plan. Michigan was all elite at that last year, and that's what made them such a formidable foe, because they could do all the fundamentals correct to down to the tiniest precision, and that will still remain there. Harbaugh is still has his mark there. Sharon Moore, when he took over, nothing changed. You know why? Because the Harbaugh implant was still there. They do have a tough schedule. I will admit that. If they get past Texas, which I think they will, I think that they have a fair chance of beating Texas in week 2. Big noon kickoff. That will be an absolute thriller of a game. I'll watch that. And I think that they match up really well against Texas, especially defensively. They'll be able to counteract the ultra aggressive style of Steve Sarkisian. We'll get to schedule stuff later in the summer, but the defense will be elite. Like I just said, the defense is awesome. Their defensive tackles will be probably the first 2 taken in the next draft class. Their secondary took a hit when Rod Moore got hurt, but be that as it may, they have an awesome secondary linebacker. Bit of a concern for me, but they have players there. Now to the Fighting Irish. Um, the one thing I have to say about the not one thing, but the main thing I have to say about Notre Dame is that their schedule is incredibly easy. A home game against Louisville and traveling to USC are the only real tough tests on the schedule. They have 10 wins really penciled in my opinion. And I love what they did in the transfer portal. They got Duke quarterback Riley Leonard, which everyone conveniently forgot about because he went to Notre Dame. No, he's a very good quarterback, and he fits the system. And FIU wide receiver Chris Mitchell, one of the top wide receivers in the transfer portal. And they got Mike Denenbrock, the LSU coordinator, to come over and take over as Notre Dame's offensive coordinator. This should be an explosive team. I always liked Marcus Freeman. I thought that his vision for the program was what they needed to be. And winning this game, I think Notre Dame will take it to Michigan. Michigan is going to be banged up at the end of the year with that tough schedule. And Notre Dame, I think, will be able to play their style of game against Michigan. All right, so winning these round 2 games, I have Georgia routing Notre Dame. I have Oregon just running right past Florida State. I think Oregon's overall team is much better than Florida State's overall team, and Oregon will have gone through a gauntlet in Ohio State, Michigan, etc. Ohio State, Alabama. This will be a phenomenal game to watch. I think would be by far the best game in this second round. I have Ohio State winning, though. Utah, Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss's offense matches up really well with Utah's defense. I think that they will exploit what Utah's defense lacks in the secondary, and I think Ole Miss will be able to throw it right past Utah. So going into these semifinal games, what we would have had last year, really, with the 4-team playoff. Georgia, Oregon, this game has already been played. It got played last year at the start of the season. Georgia routed Oregon. Georgia's team is not as good as last year's team, in my opinion, but they will still be able to go right past an improved Oregon team. And Ohio State, Ole Miss, I think that Ole Miss and Alabama are kind of the same program-wise. Not really in the specifics, but really overall. So I think Ohio State, it'll be another bloodbath, but I think they'll be able to beat out Ole Miss, coming to a Georgia Ohio State finale, and I think Ohio State wins that one. So, and again, I want to remind you as we close out the show here that this is just a May projection, so don't be all in the comments telling me how you think Georgia should beat Ohio State, or you think Oregon's going to beat Georgia, or Ole Miss would beat Ohio State, or yada, yada, yada. Don't be coming at me in the comments for that, because these are just May projections here. Your guess is as good as mine what's going to happen next year, really in 2025, when these games are being played in January. So that's it for me, though. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the channel. We've been growing, and I want you to be a part of it, so go ahead and subscribe. It's the best, most efficient way to support the podcast, and I will see y'all in the next one.